welcome and welcome back to another episode of the Format Podcast. Got a pretty interesting show for you here today. Going to switch gears a little bit. Got a great guest for you here. Going to talk some college football, most specifically the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. And here to join us and do that is the host of the Always Irish Notre Dame Football Podcast show, John Kennedy. So definitely looking forward to that. If you love college football, and especially if you love Notre Dame football, definitely want to tune in for this one. So we'll get to that in a second. But before we do, you know what time it is. If you haven't already, please go ahead, click that subscribe, that like, and that notification bell right here on YouTube. Make sure you're kept aware anytime we drop new content on the channel. If you want the audio-only version of the podcast, go ahead, open up your audio podcast platform, hit the search bar, type in the Format Podcast. We should come right up pretty much anywhere you get your audio podcast. If you enjoy the content, please give us that thumbs up, that like, or that 5-star review. Definitely appreciate it. Make sure you share the pod with anybody you know who loves sports talk, wants to hear maybe a different voice and a different perspective on the sports stories of the day than you would normally hear from the mainstream sports media platforms. If you do that, you know what happens. We find more sports fans, and it helps more sports fans find us. Now let's get right to it. I would have done a terrible Irish accent impression just now, but I don't want to offend anyone, so I'm not going to do that. But thanks for joining the show, the Format Podcast. For all of you who don't know, John is the host of the Always Irish Notre Dame Football Podcast. Great guy, great listen. It's informative, funny at the same time. John goes off sometimes, and you think he's going to pop a capillary right on screen, but that's just his love and his passion for college football and Notre Dame, especially, as you can see with the shirt. I was lucky enough, had the great opportunity to meet John last year when I was up in South Bend for the first time for Notre Dame Stanford. And that, if you love college football, whether you love Notre Dame or not, it's really an awesome experience to go to that campus and go to a game there. Put that on your bucket list. For me, it was incredible until Notre Dame couldn't get the job done against Stanford, and David Shaw, aka the Smirk, gets to walk off into the sunset with one final win against the Irish. That one hurt. But John, how you doing, man? Thank you so much for joining the show.
No problem. I'm a little mad. You made me remember that Stanford game night. You know, everything was beautiful. We had great weather. We're walking around campus, the sun setting, everything went great till the damn game started.
Right.
But I was glad that you were able to get to campus and feel and experience all of that. Bruce, I'm doing well. It's just, you know, we were in the dog days of summer so long, and you're like, we need football. We need football. You're waiting for that calendar to turn. And then in 1 week, almost everything happened. Everybody started getting back into camp. You have all those stories across the country. Then you have all the conference realignment news that's in the middle of all of it. We went from 0 to 100. Now we're off to the races, Bruce. It's a beautiful thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you mentioned conference realignment. So before we get into the Notre Dame specific stuff, let's start there with a kind of general overview of kind of what you perceive is the state of college football. And for me personally, I've always been a proponent of, I like standardization. I like when kind of things have rules and guidelines in place so that everyone isn't doing their own thing. And for the most part, you're kind of playing on the same field, right? And when I say that, I say you don't have one set of rules in the Big 12 and another set of rules in the Big 10, another set of rules in the Pac-12, and then the SEC. And the SEC can spend more money here and do it this way. And it leads to, you know, obviously tremendous results on the field versus the other conferences, et cetera, et cetera. And that's not to say, of course, that if the rules were all the same and it was standardized, that the SEC wouldn't still win. We don't know. But the point I'm trying to make is, I think that it would be better for the sport overall if there was some sort of standardization in place for a number of reasons. Kind of, what are your thoughts on that, John? And let's start in the Big Ten. So first, standardization, and then secondly, what do you think with the expansion of the Big Ten? What does that mean for that conference? And of course, what does it mean for the Irish going forward?
Yeah, I think with the standardization part, you know, I've heard rumblings, the newly elected or selected NCAA president, as Emmert's phasing out, the new guy, I want to make it a priority to standardize NIL and all this other stuff and whatever. That may be a separate discussion. I'm wondering ultimately somewhere down the road, Bruce, if we don't end up with a situation where all of the teams that are in the mix for like the new 12-team playoff, you know, the Power Four, I was going to say Power Five. I'm so used to it. The Power Four and Notre Dame, I am wondering at some point if they don't break off from the NCAA, say we're creating our own board of governance just for the football part of this, for our 12-teamer. The NCAA largely wields no power anymore. When they do, it's so inconsistently applied.
Correct.
Nobody respects it anyways. And if you're a law and order, man, that can't make you happy the way they discipline some people and other people get off scot-free. There's no rhyme or reason of how they do what they do.
Right.
I'm wondering if that may be the most realistic path to some regulation here. And then when you're making it a smaller pool of only those teams in that subset, it should be a little easier to standardize. And you put up the Power 5 ADs or whatever, and then the new Notre Dame AD, and they create a board of governance just for that new playoff setup and their guidelines and whatever. I'm wondering if that may be coming down the road. At the NCAA loses more power every week we go on in my life. So I'm wondering if that is the best approach as far as standardization goes. The NCAA showed their cards when the court system ruled that NIL was legal. The NCAA washed their hands of it and said, oh, that's it. It's legal. Do whatever you want. They didn't have a word to say about it after the court system. So it tells me they don't even have an interest in trying to govern that. So I'm wondering if that may be where this is ultimately headed as far as governance for the new playoff format. In terms of this conference realignment, this version of it, let's just throw it all out there. This isn't about the student athletes and how are they going to study and travel. No. This is about money, 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 power, 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 and money, money, and power. Everybody needs to stop the charade, quit. Just call it what it is. This is a race to power and money, primarily through these big TV deals. And everybody wants to get a seat on one of those boats that's still floating while they're still floating. But that's what it's all about. And I get it in the modern reality and the way the world is. That's what makes the world spin. I get that practically. In my heart, man, it kind of hurts. You're seeing these conferences fall apart, rivalries that aren't going to be anymore. Geographics no longer ties anybody together. So you're losing some of what we grew up with and the way college football looked and felt. We're losing that for money. And so everybody just needs to understand that's what's going on. There's no consideration of anything else. What a good time to be independent if you could swing it, though, because you don't have to worry about that pressure from you might be fine, but it takes a couple others in your conference to want to do something, and then it affects you. Good time to be independent if you can make it work.
Which is funny because, you still hear, I was listening to, well, I don't know the name of the news show, but it's in the Keyshawn, J. Will, and Max slot at 6 a.m. on ESPN on weekdays. And they had one of the, I guess the host that day, she was talking and she made the little slick comment. They brought in, they were talking about Notre Dame and what does Notre Dame do? And she did the typical thing. Oh, we're Notre Dame. We don't have to join a conference because and I'm like,
we don't.
What is this obsession
lady.
with Notre Dame joining a conference? Like, it's not going to change the on-field results of anything. Like, I don't understand this obsession with Notre Dame joining a conference. You hear it constantly, and we'll just join a conference. Well, for what? Like, what if you had something and you knew there was no benefit to you, why would you do it? Now, when there is benefit for Notre Dame, then they will join a conference. I'm sure they will. But as of right now, what exactly is the point in that?
Right. Nobody has a good answer for that. And what I've been saying on my show was right when this latest Big Ten thing started with Oregon and Washington and all that, there were no stories on Twitter or anything else. What's Notre Dame going to do here? And the board's having a meeting to discuss, or they want to talk to the Big Ten, just see what's up. All we heard was the opposite, that the Notre Dame spokesmen were saying this isn't going to affect Notre Dame at all. That was like early last week. Bruce, here's what that tells me. It tells me Notre Dame knows 100% certain that they're getting a great TV deal from NBC coming up sometime soon. because the only way any Notre Dame spokesman could be 100% sure they don't even need to investigate this conference stuff is if they're confident that their money is going to make them be competitive with the Big Ten payout. So the way I see this is they just landed a fat Under Armour deal, even though Under Armour is a fledgling, failing company overall. They're paying Notre Dame good. And so you can't argue with that money. I believe they have Pete Bavacqua as the next AD, and his current job or past job, I guess, was president of NBC Sports. He was an NBC Sports exec.
Correct.
You do not hire that guy to be the next Notre Dame AD unless you're working with him to broker a mega TV deal between Notre Dame and NBC.
Yep, I was going to bring that up. I think
that makes no sense.
Right.
The only way you, and I'm not saying that's the only reason you hire the guy. I'm not saying that, but it is not lost on me that is the bridge that connects Notre Dame to NBC in the future. So I'm saying you got fat apparel money. You're looking at a good TV deal, and you're going to have reasonable access for the new playoff format with the Notre Dame tax that maybe you don't get a buy. If you have those three things, there is really no reason to join a conference then. You just don't need it. Like, you have everything you need to do it on your own. And other people don't like that, Bruce. They don't like it that their team couldn't command that power on their own. They think we play by different rules, you know, it is what it is. But there is no practical benefit for Notre Dame to do it right now because I'm banking that TV deal is going to be good. And if it wasn't, you would hear about Notre Dame wanting to investigate this path.
Correct. So what do you think of the new Big Ten? I think that I actually heard in listening to Colin Cowherd discuss it, and it was actually pretty smart. One thing that he said was that it's a boon for the Big Ten because now, as we just discussed with the TV thing and the money, they are going to dominate television because from 10 o'clock in the morning in the East, you've got games all the way out to midnight on the West Coast. So, you know, you can dominate an entire college football Saturday within your conference because you now have a nationwide footprint. And that's beautiful for the TV money, for the ad revenue, et cetera. And that's only going to increase as time goes on. And of course, you know, they didn't just grab some, you know, the dregs of the Pac-12. You know, you've got USC, who is an all-time national football powerhouse brand-wise and on the field. You've got Oregon with Nike behind them. Obviously, you've got the Huskies, who are a historical power, but still a very good program, like to this day, and will probably finish a top 10 team this year. And of course, what was the other one? UCLA, which on the basketball court, right, is an all-time great powerhouse. And with Chip Kelly and NIL, they're improving in football as well. So you didn't just, you know, grab four random Joes from off the street to join your conference. You really made big moves. What are your thoughts on the Big Ten and how these moves are going to affect the college football world going forward?
Man, it's really interesting. I think you have a couple dynamics in play here. One of them is no doubt for like the footprint of the Big Ten. The footprint of the Big Ten's the whole country now, except for way in the South.
Yes.
But you got coast to coast coverage and the Midwest. So their footprint is a lot bigger. And it's interesting how certain teams are all not going to get the same TV payout share based on who is in when. So that's interesting. But big picture, their power footprint is growing. When you zoom back in, though, I wonder, and I'm not a Big Ten guy, I'm an independent guy, but I'm wondering what this does to the compete level. You know, like I wonder what an Ohio State fan's thinking or a Michigan fan. Like, we're used to one of us being the standard bearers at that conference. What happens when you get Oregon in there playing tough? When you got USC in there and all their skill talent? Like, I wonder what happens to the compete level. And one of my thoughts is those middle tier and lower Big Ten teams, I think they're dead now. They have those teams now have no chance of ever winning the Big Ten. Any of those middle, lower tier, I don't see how they have a chance anymore when you add in what they just did. So competitively, I'm really interested to see how this breaks down.
Well, I agree with you that I don't think that the lower tier teams, maybe the mid ones, maybe in a great year, the Iowas or the Minnesotas could possibly pull an upset. Likely not, but possible. But I get what you're saying when you say the lower tier guys, the Rutgers and the probably the Northwesterns and whatnot, highly unlikely to win a Big Ten championship. With that said, I don't think your Michigans, your Ohio States, your Penn States, your Wisconsins are unduly concerned about UCLA and USC, because if they have to come play in November and December, all that skill talent gets slowed down a great deal by the snow and by the cold. They're not going to be the same team. It's going to take, in my estimation, 5 to 10 years for them to acclimate to that and to develop the requisite physical toughness in the trenches to be able to deal with that. Like,
This
speed
is
is
the
one thing.
Florida coming out in you, Bruce. You're spoiled down there. This is the Florida coming out in you, buddy. Look
no,
at you. I can see you shivering over there already.
Well, no, I mean, speed and elite playmaking is one thing, but now when you get into trying to deal with those elements, and you know this,
Yeah.
you're a Chicago guy. This is the first place I've ever lived where it doesn't really get cold and it doesn't
Yeah.
snow.
Yeah. I want to see USC make a November trip
That's right.
to Rutgers in
That's right.
November. Like,
That's right.
have fun up there.
Yeah. Now the talent
Go to
level is going to
Iowa in
go to
November. Go to
Wisconsin.
Nebraska.
Right. Go to the big house, go
Yeah.
to the shoe. I mean, that stuff is going to be different. All
Yep.
that speed gets slowed down a lot. So not only does your mentality has to change as well as your personnel does. So it's going to
Yeah.
be interesting. But
Yeah.
with that said, they're going to have to recruit differently. So I don't know that the top teams in the Big Ten are unduly concerned about that. Now, if you're a Washington, if you're in Oregon, you're used to a little more difficult weather, but still, it's not the same. But so to your point, I don't think they're particularly concerned. This is still the Michigans, the Ohio States, the Penn States, the Wisconsin's conference, and it's going to take a little while before those teams from out west can really, I think, make a dent. So I'm not worried about that too
Yeah,
much.
I mean, I do like how you brought up like an adjustment window period, because I
Mm-hmm.
was going to bring up to you, Ohio State's got a lot of skill talent. It's cold in Columbus, and I still
That's
see
right.
them running around.
Yeah,
But they've been there forever, and
that's
if you
correct.
go there, what you're signing up for, and a lot of them kids already have that mindset that
Mm-hmm.
they don't phase them.
Right, right.
Yeah,
So
that's a good point.
yeah. So let's move from the Big Ten. Obviously, we have the SEC, which is the power conference in college football for a lot of reasons, but mainly because they continue to win championships. And I think this is kind of interesting because next year you have Texas and Oklahoma joining that conference, and
Yeah,
those are two heavy hitters. Now, Oklahoma, as it stands right now, isn't the same Oklahoma as it's been over the last 20 years,
yeah.
because Lincoln Riley is now gone to SC, as we know, as we know. Oh boy, but he's gone, and Brent Venables is there. Although Oklahoma recruited really well this past offseason, and so we'll see if in his second year he can really get that defense humming. And from there, Jeff Lebby and I wanted to say Gabe Davis, Dylan Gabriel can get that offense going. But yeah, what are your thoughts on the SEC? How's it looking? And before you do that, a lot of people have Georgia three-peating, and I want to say, as hard as it is to three-peat, that's extremely possible. And the reason why is this: UT Martin, Ball State, South Carolina, UAB, Auburn, Kentucky, Vanderbilt, Florida, Missouri, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Georgia Tech. These guys look like they have one real game all year. Now, I want to bring this up to you, John, because I hear you. You're my guy, and I love you. But I hear you ranting and raving about Michigan's high school schedule. And I
Yeah.
don't hear you saying anything at all about Georgia and this cupcake schedule they've got here. Your thoughts, your response to that.
I mean, on the surface, I have a lot more personal beef with the Michigan faithful than I ever do with the Georgia people. The Georgia people were actually pretty nice to interact with when they came to Notre Dame a few years ago.
Right.
I don't have that relationship with the Michigan people. So
Right.
There's a different level of animosity there
Yeah.
in history with me and Michigan. So
I got
that's
you.
one part of it. But here's a actual practical answer. You don't see me questioning Georgia as much with the schedule, for the reason that even though they've had some softer schedules, they have proven it in the playoff that they
That is
literally,
correct.
when it comes down to brass tacks against the best teams, They have performed on that stage and won the championship. So even if the regular schedule is lighter, I have to credit a team to a certain extent for proving it when they do make it, even though it was on the backs of a weak schedule. So they have a proof of concept there that Michigan does not have after skating through the Big Ten and then playing bad in the playoff. Okay. And so it's a different level to me because they are proven at a different level. But when I get into this SEC discussion, as a Notre Dame guy, it is really interesting to me. You got Georgia and all their recruiting, and we all know what that is and whatever. But as a Notre Dame guy, I have never had more interest in LSU and Alabama than I do this year. There's Notre Dame DNA all over the SEC now.
You're 1,000% right.
And it is a new world when I'm looking at an Alabama offense, and the battery of it may be a quarterback OC combo that we are ultra familiar with in Reese and Buckner. And I don't know how that starting job is going to work out, whether Buckner gets it or not. We'll see. But you have all of that going on at Alabama. And then you have Brian Kelly over at LSU. And I think Brian Kelly's looking at Alabama going in the back of his mind. I wonder if they're going to have a little dip this year. And maybe I could move into that spot, pushing Kirby and knock Alabama down a peg. But my intrigue with the SEC has never been higher because of all those Notre Dame ties. I don't know what's going to happen. I know Kelly gets tested early. They got Florida State game
in the
one.
opener. Yep.
And that's going to be a big indicator of both of those teams are in the top 10 in the preseason. I want to see what happens there. Is there anybody else in the SEC you think is a real contender this year? Or is it pretty much Georgia and then Kelly and LSU and Alabama? Anybody else you think could rise?
No, I don't see it. I think it's the top three. And this is, I'm not going to get on my SEC soapbox, but I'm going to keep it simple here. There's always this, the SEC is the best conference, hands down, blah, blah, blah. That's groupthink because the bottom half of the SEC is just as bad as everyone else. Vanderbilt's no good. Mizzou's no good. Kentucky is, some years
Bruce,
they're good, some years
Vanderbilt's
they're not.
going to play their first couple games at high school stadium. Did you see that?
I did not.
They don't have their field turf. Isn't going to be installed. They got to play at a high school for the first couple of weeks.
I thought it just meant more.
All those smart people at Vanderbilt couldn't figure it out. And there was a picture of the stadium and it's all torn up. And they're like, they realize it's not going to be done. They have to play at a high school stadium nearby. Wow. Man, that's a bad look.
Yeah. I thought it just means more in the SEC. I don't know.
It just takes longer. That's what we're going to change it to. So I don't know. And then like Tennessee, were they like a little half flash in the pan, or do you think they could compete, or are they going to take a step back?
I think they'll take a step back. Hendon Hooker was amazing last year, and they lost. I think Jalen Hyatt, their number one receiver. Both of those guys are gone. So what's it? The quarterback, can't remember his name, but Harbaugh recruited him to Michigan. Big arm guy, but has accuracy issues. So we're going to see. But Tennessee's system is very quarterback friendly. It's not a reads all over the field. They like to isolate half of the field or, a third of it to really make things easy for the quarterback. But then also, that Alabama is going to be hunting for these guys. No one is going to, I think people last year didn't see them coming. There's going to be no surprise this year. They know that Tennessee has talent all over the field, but I think Tennessee does take a step back. They're not going to be bad, but they're going to take a step back. I don't think they're going to be what they were last year. I think Georgia pretty much cakewalks to the SEC championship game undefeated in that conference. And whatever the result is of that, they'll still make the playoff because that just is what it is, right? I heard Colin Cowherd. I listen to his show a lot. I like when he talks football. When he talks basketball, that's a different thing entirely. But anyway, he's got LSU winning the national championship. And
didn't he have LSU versus Michigan in the title game?
I believe he does. Yes.
I think he had LSU, Michigan. You want to talk about me rooting for an asteroid to win the day? I mean, you're asking me to pick, do you want to be stabbed to death or burned to death? Like, there's no good answer, man. I mean, that is a Notre Dame fan's worst matchup because one of these groups you can't stand is going to be the champion then. However, I could see it happening though. Michigan has a favorable run right into Ohio State that last week.
Right.
And with Kelly, I've been joking about this. I've been saying Kelly's biggest advantage right now at LSU is he's got this quarterback with so much experience. Even Kelly can't mess the guy up. He's just too old and too experienced and athletic for Kelly to get in his head about messing up his motion or whatever he did to all the Notre Dame guys that got worse the longer they played under him. But that's going to be really, really interesting. And I think, listen, I don't know what's going to happen with Alabama's quarterback. I don't know if Buckner's going to win the job or not, but I am not. What?
I think he's going to get the job by the main reason is that familiarity with Tommy Rees and Tommy Rees's system.
Bruce,
I think that is
how is that going to go?
Day.
How do you see that going in the SEC with now Buckner's going to have way more talent around him to distribute, but also Buckner's far from a polished product. He is far from a finished product. So how do you see those things clashing?
I think what happens there is Buckner has enough mobility to keep defenses honest in the option game and in the RPO game. He has enough mobility there to present that threat of him pulling it and taking off with it, and that will theoretically that should free up some of the passing stuff and maybe cover up some of his accuracy issues. Again, the other part is that the accuracy issues may, I'm not going to say disappear, but may fade with more talented receivers on the outside that you may not necessarily have to put it right on them. If you get it within 2 or 3 yards of them, these guys can make the catch.
Did you see Reese's quotes about the offense that came out, I believe, yesterday? Did you happen to catch what Tommy Boy said?
I didn't. What did he say about him?
He literally, you know what? I have the quote up here from my morning show. I could give you the exact quote. I did that on accident. He said, quote, "We're probably going to look different than we did when I was elsewhere because our personnel is different.
There you
I
go.
don't have a system that says you have to fit these squares."
But see, John, this is you and I have been talking about this since Reese left for Alabama. And your thing is, maybe you don't necessarily believe in Reese because you didn't see it at Notre Dame, but we both know as guys who've been watching Notre Dame for our entire adult lives, when you don't have certain playmakers, it limits what you can do.
Yeah, so obviously it does. But my problem with the quote is, even if I agree with him that he had to fit these squares, I partially blame him for creating the squares. Like, I'm not going to let him get away with acting like this is the NFL where he had no say on the guys, the material there is to work with. He's a part of the reason the quarterbacks never progressed.
Okay, so that's true. But
I can't let him skate on that like, it just happened that way. He's a part of the reason we didn't have the talent you needed.
So that's true. But what if we say that he did everything he could with the quarterbacks that he had at Notre Dame? And we talk about this all the time. Another thing you and I talk about, number one, let's say, I'm just choosing at random, the best quarterback in the country is a Texas kid, or the best quarterback in the country is a Florida kid. What's the likelihood that that kid is ending up at Notre Dame where we're not, we're not doing the Tennessee McDonald's bag full of cash thing, right? We're not doing the other school, hey, you just come play ball, we'll take care of everything else thing. You name the degree you want and we'll set that up for you, right? Notre Dame, you got to do real work, you got to go to real classes, you're not getting paid like that. And so some of the incentives that some of the other programs can offer aren't there. And so
that's accurate. That's just a fact. It's a different animal. But nobody should know that more than this guy. He was a recruit, he was a player, and he came there to coach. True. It can't be like a surprise that you have these limitations. Like nobody should know him better than him. He's been living those limitations since he was 17.
Right.
So I'm not going to let him get away with all that. Now, that quote, Bruce, is absolutely true. I think we could all acknowledge there's a different talent level at Alabama than Notre Dame.
Brian Kelly made similar remarks at LSU as well.
I'm not disputing the veracity of the quote, but I am saying when you put yourself out there like that a little bit,
You better back it up.
you better deliver. And you
Yeah,
can't go out there and
absolutely.
start having 3-and-outs with the old and little Notre Dame quarterback running around. If you do that for a half, they're going to
Right.
send him back to Notre Dame.
Yep. No, you're right. And
Like,
it is
you
going
got
to
to
be,
deliver out there.
no, absolutely. It's going to be very interesting to see. Brian Kelly made similar comments at LSU and,
Yeah.
you know, but anyway, we're not going to,
But Bruce, do you
yeah,
really think Buckner's going to win that job outright? Do
I
you
think he's going to
really?
win that. Well, maybe not outright, but I think Saban's going to say, between Saban and Reese, they're going to say, okay, this is the best option we have for right now. Let's
Yeah.
continue to develop those other guys. And at first opportunity, if Buckner doesn't show that he's what we need, he's coming out there. But I think
Yeah.
he has the best opportunity to be named the starter based
Yeah.
on his familiarity with Reese and with the system.
Yeah. And the other thing, Bruce, is Reese has some quirky personality things. I mean, I've heard multiple times he was a little insulted. He thought he should have been interviewed for the job that Freeman got. And
Interesting.
there was a little, he was kind of like, I've been a long time guy here. And then this defense coordinator comes in and you're giving him the job. You didn't even talk to me. So I heard there was a little bit of friction there with ego, which I could understand.
Okay.
I get that. And so Reese is a little tricky, and he did try and sell Hartman to leave Notre Dame and jump to Alabama with him.
Oh, did he?
Oh, he did. And Freeman
Okay.
saved that. Freeman got on an airplane, flew to Hartman's family, and put that fire out.
Wow. Okay.
But don't think, little Tommy loves Notre Dame. Right when he got to Alabama, he was calling Hartman going, I'm your guy. I'm the one you had that relationship with. You're not done. You ain't at Notre Dame yet. You could come to Alabama. And
wow.
credit Freeman that he put that fire out and took care of it personally and sold Hartman on staying at Notre Dame.
Okay.
And so that's with Reese. But with Buckner, I wish the guy nothing but good luck and good health.
Right.
He has had nothing but bad stuff happen ever since the end of high school. Correct. He had an ACL year lost in high school, a COVID year lost. Then when he was healthy, they had a transfer come in. Then he got hurt again, and then he's healthy again, and they have another transfer coming in. I think he was just like, change his scenery. Like, this just start. Every roll of the dice works against me here. I got to try something else. And I genuinely think he got so frustrated, he just needed to see greener pastures.
There it is. Well, John, we're going to leave it right there for part one of this discussion, and we'll pick it up next time with part two. But before we go, John, let the people know where they can find you. Tell us a little bit about that.
Certainly. So the easiest way is YouTube. Just type Always Irish in. You'll find me on YouTube. If you're on Twitter, search bar Always Irish. You can find me there as well.
No more Twitter, John. It's
X. It's X. Yeah, exactly. You know what I saw, Bruce? All the people on Twitter that subscribe to the premium Twitter that you pay $6 or whatever for. All their wives were getting mad looking at the credit card statements, and it's just X premium. And and there was a bunch of guys and their wives all thought it was like a porn site. And they're like, X premium. Don't be putting that on our Discover card, And it's That's like, funny. No, it's just Twitter. Good luck convincing her of that.
For real.
So I saw that name change caused some issues. And so I don't know, man. It's Twitter, YouTube, and then USA Today Fighting Irish Wire. I write for the digital paper there, and every day we have Notre Dame stories. We have a really good team over there. Every single day we have articles up. So USA Fighting Irish Wire, you'll see the articles with my name on them. And sometimes they correlate to my show. Sometimes they don't at all. Check it out.
All right. Good stuff. Well, John, thanks for joining us today. And next time we get back, we are going to talk more specifically Notre Dame. We're going to talk fall camp. We're going to talk looking forward to this season, what we expect from year 2 of the Marcus Freeman experience.
Beautiful. Right, so, sounds great.
Yep. So if you haven't already, please make sure you go ahead, click that subscribe, that like, and that notification bell. We'll see you next time. Leave your comments in the comment section, and I'm out. Peace.